Welcome to the AICPA Town Hall Series, your resource for the latest news and updates on pressing issues facing the accounting profession.
Welcome to a special edition of the AICPA Town Hall Series. I'm Eric Auskerson, one of the executives at the AICPA, and I lead CPA.com, the business and technology subsidiary. And with me is Lisa Simpson, who leads the firm services area. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you.
So it's a busy week, so that's why we're having a special edition. We all kicked off this week with the president's announcements related to some changes to the PPP program. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how things are going right now with the processing of these PPP loans. We'll cover a little bit of what we know right now related to Biden's announcements, and then we're just going to cover a couple of tax items. So let's get right into it. As we said, it's woke up Monday morning, and this was a surprise to everybody. This was something that the Biden administration had been working on for a little bit, and they announced these significant changes and really their commitment to the PPP program. So Lisa and I and others have been busy this week talking to a number of governmental officials, as well as the lending community and obviously the firm community. So we do have these resources available in a number of resource centers. We'll talk about that at the end. But there is a document that the administration put out on Monday related to these PPP changes. And then there's also been some really good articles this week. The New York Times did two pieces, one on the announcements that the Biden administration made. And they also did a rather comprehensive piece related to what's going on with the fraud checks and the errors that, these errors that are happening due to these flags that the SBA has put in place with this round of PPP. So we're gonna get into all of this over the coming slides. But first, let's just talk about where things stand. So this is data as of Sunday. Every Monday, the SBA is releasing the amount of approved loans through the Sunday of the week. So this is as of February 21st. And what it shows is that there's plenty of funding still available. So about half of the allocated dollars, there's $284 billion allocated. About half of that has now been approved and close to 2 million draw one and draw two loans for this phase. You can see here the rankings of the top lenders. Our partner BizDoCredit has the most approved loans, and we're learning a lot through that program. So what I'm going to get into a little bit, and Lisa will join me here, is I'll talk a little bit about what's going on with the SBA error and hold code handling. This is some information that came out about 2 weeks ago, where the SBA is providing additional capabilities for the lenders to resolve these error codes. So progress is being made, but as the New York Times article states, there's a lot of applications that are being held up. And I talked about this 2 weeks ago, so I'm not going to do as thorough a review of what's happening on this webinar, but let me just real quickly talk about the three phases of where these error codes occur. The first phase is when you're trying to get an application submitted into the SBA, and there could be an API validation error. So and this is the area that is still the most unclear. So there, for some reason, there's some flag that's stopping the successful submission of a PPP draw one or draw two loan into the SBA systems. Then once it gets into the SBA systems, they start doing additional compliance checks. They will validate if they want to move that application into this review process. So at that first phase, it's really the second phase, after it's been successfully submitted, They will then validate that application for further review. What is happening is a number of applications are being stopped here, and further information is being required from the borrower and the lender to advance that application. In some instances, the lender can clear that code. In other instances, they cannot. And then you have this final phase, which is when they do the review. They spend 48 hours doing the review of the application, and it either will get an E-Tran number or will fall into a do not approve category. If it goes in the do not approve category, then once again, the lenders can work with the borrowers to resolve those error codes. When we've been speaking to the different governmental officials, be it some of the White House staff, Treasury, or SBA, we've stated one of the most important things that really needs to be done is just expectation setting. And some of them have acknowledged that right at the start of this program in mid-January, we should have just clearly stated that this process is very different, and at times it's going to take a couple of weeks or longer for an application to get through to approval, and that's because of these validation checks. They put these in place because they want to safeguard taxpayer dollars, and that's why they did it. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done in how it is occurring, and I'm going to give you a little bit more of a deep dive here, because this is probably, as I said, this first phase, and this is where it's most unclear on how to get this resolved with the SBA. Every day progress is being made. I think next week there's going to be more announcements on how they're going to work with lenders to resolve these error codes for the borrowers. But right now, with some lender platforms, 90% of the errors are happening before they even get it submitted into the SBA. So that's a big stumbling block for these applications, and there is steps being taken to improve this. And every day, I in discussion with lenders and discussions with Biz2Credit, good progress is being made around this. So Lisa, let me just let you jump in here and just comment. You're talking to the firms, you're talking to the lending community. What would you like to add?
I think the important thing to keep in mind is that the progress is slowly being made, as Eric mentioned, and a lot of the progress is having to be made manually by the lenders going back to the borrowers, or the CPAs who are trying to help the borrower get into the system. So just manually trying to look at the codes that got it kicked out to begin with and seeing what can be done. Sometimes that might include having to provide additional documentation to prove that the business was actually operating on February 15th of 2020. So just understanding that these codes were unexpected and are requiring a lot of time to clear.
Yeah, and the good news is there's plenty of funding. So there's been, at the start, there was anxiety. Would this be like April of 2020? No, it's not like April of 2020. There's plenty of money, and the process is quite different. One thing that we're beginning to learn is that in some cases, there's actually escalations occurring right to the SBA. We're seeing firms do this. We're seeing clients do this. And that's to the capital access group at the SBA. And we're trying to better understand that. So I'm hopeful that we're going to get much better at kind of understanding this as we move into March, and we will catch up overall. The lenders will catch up, and we actually think March could be a very important month for a lot of new applications still, and that's because some of these changes that Biden has announced. So Lisa, why don't you take us through those?
Thanks, Eric. So we started with a picture of the announcement that the White House made, and basically all of the changes that they're proposing are designed to open additional access to the program for small business borrowers. So we'll talk through the changes that we know about so far, and we'll see what's to come next. But one of the biggest changes that you've probably heard about is that the administration is going to announce, maybe even as early as tonight, that they will be changing the calculation for sole proprietors, independent contractors, Schedule C filers from a net income calculation to a gross revenue calculation, similar to what farmers are able to use now if they're filing a Schedule F. So if you're working with sole proprietors, you know that many of them report only a very small amount of profit at the bottom of their Schedule C. So they weren't eligible for a very significant loan amount under the terms of the original program that rolled out. So we are expecting to see, again, as early as tonight or possibly early next week, that they're moving to a gross revenue calculation. They've also established $1 billion set aside for these very small sole proprietor filers, and are going to be targeting that at low and moderate income areas. We've talked on past town halls about the opportunity to assist borrowers in those categories. So they're actually setting aside an additional $1 billion for that. An important caveat is that we don't expect at this time for these changes to be retroactive to Schedule C borrowers who've already submitted and been approved for loan applications. We also wanted to just remind you that there is still that cap on the maximum amount of loan for a borrower with no employees at $20,833.
And Lisa, what you know,
change.
yeah, I mean, so good changes. There's plenty there's plenty of money, but so even I don't think that it's good that they've got the $1 billion set aside, but I think there is enough funding. And the other thing that we're all looking for, it is Friday right now, it's midday Friday, but we're looking forward to what we understand is a Friday night IFR, which is going to come out with more guidance, and we'll be talking. That'll be the key. This IFR that comes out that describes the particulars here. We'll unpack that over the weekend and be ready to discuss it on next week's town hall.
Absolutely. Another big change that is generating a lot of buzz in the press is around the 14-day period that is now in place so that borrowers with fewer than 20 employees can apply in this designated window. So this gives borrowers with 20 or more employees the chance to really refine their application to make sure that if it's a second draw, that they've got their first draw number, that the EIN number that they're using matches what's in the federal databases. So just additional time for those 20 and above borrowers to really dig into that application and make sure that everything is correct so that they can avoid any error checks or hold codes that Eric has talked about. The number of employees is based on headcount, according to our understanding. So that includes both full and part-time. But again, as Eric keeps mentioning, there's money in the system. So if you're not in the system yet, there's still an opportunity to get your application in and progress.
And Lisa, just on that, you and I have been talking about this. If you are in the system right now, they're going to continue to advance that application. So if you have a hold code or an error code, that is something that the lender will be able to continue to work on. We're not sure if you're still in that, if you've been trying to get in and you've been kicked out by that validation error at the front door. We're not clear if you'll be able to kind of advance that application. Hopefully you can. But once this starts back up on March 9th, new applications can come in, and hopefully some of this backlog will be cleared up. Will be cleared up by then. So I think there's this it came out on Monday, so it surprised some people. I know some businesses all of a sudden jumped and said, "Let me get the application in." So this has created some anxiety. It's obviously created anxiety as well for some of those larger applications that are being held up with hold codes right now.
Yeah. And, we're not sure so right now the program expires on March 31. We're not sure if it's going to be extended beyond that date, but we do feel confident that if a borrower has their application into the system, but it's still being worked at March 31, that it would continue to progress. So funding could continue past that March 31 date. The key is just to have that application in by that date. A couple of other changes that were made this week are, again, designed to open more access to borrowers for the PPP program. So currently there was a hold if an owner was defaulted on student federal debt or was behind. So that's been removed. And then a couple of other changes to talk about: restrictions for prior non-fraud felony convictions, and then a change that allows non-US citizens who are paying their taxes using an I-10 can now qualify. So if the business owner is a green card holder or a visa holder and is paying their taxes, then they will also be eligible.
And Lisa, one thing we've been talking about: false positives. In particular, the kind of criminal background false positive. There's been a lot of those. There's been a lot of cases where firms and the borrowers have had just to state that they did not have any criminal conviction. So that's some of these databases that some of this information is being pulled from doesn't seem to be entirely accurate. That's causing a little bit of additional friction in the system. And then there's also what has been done here by the Biden administration is changing some of those flags so more people can get through.
Yeah. Switching gears just a little bit, we spent a lot of time last week on the town hall talking about IRS operational challenges and the impact that's having on filing season. This week, our advocacy team sent a letter to the IRS and Treasury that basically says we need to know sooner rather than later. So we're asking that if the due date for filing is going to be extended, let us know by March 1 so that there's less uncertainty and taxpayers and tax professionals are able to adapt to the changes. If the date is postponed, then we're advocating for a June 15 extended due date. Very important within that is also advocating for relief on penalties for underpayment and late payment. So changing the thresholds to make it easier for a taxpayer to not be subject to those penalties. This one's very important. We're asking the IRS to halt all of their compliance efforts, so lien, levies, notices, until they're caught up. We all know that there is a multi-million piece backlog of mail that needs to be sorted through the IRS because of all the COVID shutdowns. So we're asking that until all of that is cleared out, to halt compliance efforts that's causing so much stress in the system. And then expanding the temporary e-signature relief options that have been granted so that those are also more available during this uncertain tax filing season. So we submitted that letter this week, and we will certainly keep up our efforts in that area.
And we'll definitely be covering this on the March 4th town hall, and we've
Absolutely.
got Barry Melanson joining us for that town hall, and he'll be providing the latest.
Absolutely. Just a quick reminder that we have the updated summary of PPP and additional FAQs available at aicpa.org/SBA. We have loan amount calculators there and loan forgiveness calculators as well. So you'll find a lot of answers to your questions on that site for you.
And we also are conducting twice a week updates related to the CPA Business Funding Portal. I know some of you have been attending that. You're welcome to attend that even if you're not using the CPA Loan Portal. During those 1 hour sessions, we get into a lot more details around what is happening with the error codes and the processing, and how things are going overall with getting those PPP applications completed. So here's the information on that.
And Eric, a quick note on that. Similar to our town halls, if you're not able to participate live, just register for the event, and then you can get access to the recording. You can also get access on the next page that Eric's going to talk to you about. I had a chance to watch yesterday's town hall or yesterday's update later. A lot of great information, not particularly pertaining to the portal, but if you're talking to your clients about their growing frustration about why their application is being held, you'll get some really good insights from the conversations they're having.
And this is just a special page. It's complementary to some of the things that are on the AICPA SBA page, but this has all of those things that I highlighted at the start of this webinar, such as the 2 New York Times articles, the White House announcement. Clearly, we have things here that are related to the portal platform, videos on that. But there is, as Lisa just said, there's a lot of broad information that could be helpful for you as you're supporting your clients on this, even if they're, and many of them are using other lenders, obviously. So, but feel free to leverage these resources, which are all open to everyone. Again, we try to. It's a busy time, so staying active with you on LinkedIn, in social media. And what we really wanted to do today was just give you this update here on some pretty important developments over the past few days. We will be getting into all of this in greater detail next week, but just real quickly, a summary here on what's happened. Big announcements from the Biden administration. We covered some of those details tonight. We think the IFR is coming, but don't hold us to that. But I think by next week's town hall, that IFR will come out. Hopefully they'll have some additional guidance beyond just the Biden administration announcement, because Lisa, there is a lot of open questions related to the PPP program.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the questions that are around affiliates and how revenue declines are to be calculated. And so just still a lot of unknowns. So hopefully we'll get those answers soon.
So we know, again, that it's a stressful time. I can't believe it's the end of February. We've all been going pretty hard for these first 2 months. We look forward to being with you next week. As we said earlier, Barry Melanson will be joining us, as well as some others. So have a good week, and don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have any questions.
Thank you for your participation. You can now subscribe to the AICPA Town Hall series on your favorite podcast platform, as well as watch archives on YouTube and AICPA TV. Tune in for live broadcasts Thursdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Time.